Part two. Sorry about the technical difficulties. All right. So, like we've talked about in part one, Stalin did improve some of the infrastructure and he increased agriculture, but killed a lot of people, uh, stole people's land, threw people in jail, suppressed public speech, um, created this fear of this uh, atmosphere of fear and suspicion. People were always afraid they were being spied on. Anybody who spoke out against Stalin or the Soviet Union, they were always in danger of being turned in. More than 20 million Russians were victims of the purges. Stalin also banned any religious practice. He felt like that would be giving the people something to be loyal to other than him. And he very closely monitored the arts, culture. So, in the October Revolution, Stalin really was not a main player. But if you look at this photograph, or this painting, that makes it look as if Stalin is, the one who's like the general. Same over here. He's wearing a white suit, very pure, and there are children giving him flowers. He used education as a way of indoctrinating or kind of brainwashing his people. He changed history lessons to look better for him. Case in point, the his role or his lack of a role in the October Revolution. Trotsky, a famous Russian thinker, um, was not respected. He was presented unfairly. A lot of teachers were killed in that 20 million person purge because teachers were under suspicion for teaching things that went against Stalin, right? Somebody would report a teacher, they wouldn't need any evidence or anything like that. And artists, writers, musicians, anything they made praising Stalin would be rewarded. So the arts didn't exactly thrive during this era because they weren't allowed to make real art. They had to make propaganda. So with that, we're going to set our sights off of Russia, at least for now, and we're going to talk about Israel. That seems like a big leap, but we'll kind of connect the dots. But before we get to Israel, let's watch this, shall we? It's only 4 minutes and 15 seconds long from the History Channel. Remember, with stuff like this, it's very important to, especially on a topic like communism, it's important to make sure you're getting your info from a reliable source. So let's watch this and then we'll close it out. You guys do have, like I mentioned, you have a homework assignment due Friday at 11:59 p.m. You guys have done really a pretty good job of a very good job, in fact, of turning in your stuff. So keep up the good work there.
terms of ruthlessness, bloodlust, Stalin remains one of the greatest villains of the 20th century.
Yosef Jukashvili was born on December 18th, 1879. He later changed his name to Stalin, meaning man of steel.
Stalin had a very harsh childhood in terms of poverty, and he had a tough life as a young man. Was very quickly attracted to radical movements and causes.
Between 1902 and 1913, Stalin was imprisoned 8 times by the Russian secret police.
Stalin's rise to power started after the Russian Revolution of 1917, when the Bolsheviks deposed the Tsar and created a communist society.
Lenin died in 1924, and there was a big struggle about the succession of Lenin. Stalin eventually took over in a very complex maneuver that really showed his master skills as a manipulator of men.
Under Stalin, Russia became the second largest industrial economy in the world. It was all planned economies, 5-year plans, and if you didn't play by his rules, you went off to a labor camp, or you were summarily executed in some fashion.
3 million kulaks died as a result of Stalin's policies in the early 1930s. Now, he did increase the amount of food that was being produced, but at what cost?
During what many historians term Stalin's reign of terror, no one was safe from his ambition. His forced industrialization led to countless millions of deaths, and the worst man-made famine in human history.
Just before World War II, Hitler and Stalin signed a non-aggression pact. That fell apart in June of 1941 when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union.
When the Germans turned and began to invade Russia, they underestimated Joe Stalin. The siege of Stalingrad was so great there was no food on either side. So the German soldiers would give little children who were residents of Stalingrad a crust of bread if they would fill their canteens from the Volvo River. And as the children came back into Stalingrad, they were shot by Stalin snipers. That's how he consolidated his power. The most feared man in Russia, and with very good reason.
The Soviet Union lost an estimated 20 million people during World War II, more than any other nation. During the Big Three conferences, Stalin demanded much of Eastern Europe as compensation.
Stalin established an Iron Curtain from the Baltic to the Adriatic Sea. The Soviet Union was a major superpower with the potential of a nuclear arsenal in 1949. So that meant he had brought the Soviet Union from a minor regional power in Europe to a global superpower.
On March 5th, 1953, Joseph Stalin died.
Stalin is regarded by many Russian citizens as a great man. They had enormous pride in what he did for their country. He raised it to a level that it had not been before. He was mostly feared. He gave us the KGB. He gave us the Soviet labor camps. He gave us summary executions. We don't know how many people died at his hand in his own country for both reasons that were real and imaginable, because they did not play by Stalin's rules.
I think Stalin's image today is increasingly concentrated around his role as one of the greatest mass murderers of the 20th century.
Mark Twain is now thought of as America's first celebrity because he was so good at capturing the public imagination, and it became important to him to have a public image.
All right, guys. With that, we're going to call it a day. See ya on Monday.